My name is Camille Rivers, and I grew up in a quiet, tree-lined suburb in Washington State. If you passed our house from the outside, you'd probably think it belonged in a feel-good family movie. White shutters, neatly trimmed hedges, lavender blooming along the sidewalk. A perfect little picture. But inside was a cold experiment dressed up as family. I was the firstborn to Evan and Rachel Rivers. Dad was a systems architect who saw life in binary, logic, and results. Mom? She read parenting manuals like they were sacred texts. According to her, raising a child was a science project, not an act of love. I was their prototype, the trial run. From the moment I took my first steps, everything I did was timed, tracked, and tested. But by the time I was 3 and still couldn't recite the alphabet backward or solve beginner math puzzles, I saw the change. Mom's tone hardened. Dad's gaze shifted, not angry, just disappointed. Like I was a failed code that didn't compile. I remember one day vividly. I was 4, fingers sticky with Play-Doh, when Mom leaned over to Dad and said, not quietly, I think we need to accept Camille isn't keeping up. We have to act now before her development window closes. Dad didn't say much, but the way he looked at me, it said enough, like he'd given up solving me. Then came Ivy, my sister, my parents' second chance. When Ivy was born, everything transformed. Our home turned into a live-in Montessori museum. Every surface had educational toys. The fridge was covered with charts on developmental milestones. There were flashcards in the bathroom and classical music playing in the nursery to boost her cognitive wiring, as Mom liked to say. I tried to be happy for her, I really did. But one day, when Ivy was barely 8 months old, Mom watched her knock down a block tower and clapped like she'd just discovered fire. Then she glanced at me, sitting on the floor with my sketchpad. Still drawing, Camille? Ivy's already responding to hand signals. We might have something special here. Something special. The words stung. By the time I was 10, Ivy had her own tutor, imported books, and even a foreign language coach. I had spelling tests and a weekly reminder that I should try to catch up. When I brought home a hand-painted picture that won second place in an art contest, Mom barely glanced at it. That's nice. Ivy read an entire beginner's chapter book today, out loud. Dad nodded, installing a new logic game on Ivy's iPad like I wasn't even in the room. I stopped expecting praise, or even acknowledgement. But the moment I knew I was truly invisible, that came when I was 12. We had this tiny upstairs room. Not huge, but it had a skylight that let in soft sun in the mornings and a view of the woods behind our house. It was my favorite place in the world. Quiet. Mine. I spent hours up there reading, doodling, just breathing without judgment. One evening, Ivy walked in without knocking. She was 8. Mom said, I'm taking your room. I need the light for my new study space. I blinked. No, you're not. This is my room. She didn't argue, just shrugged and left. The next day, I came home to find all my stuff crammed into the cramped guest room near the laundry. Ivy's name was taped to the skylight room door. Inside, a brand new ergonomic desk, color-coded study bins, and a motivational poster that read, Genius is a lifestyle. I ran to Mom. Why would you do that? That was my room. She didn't even pause what she was doing. You're older now. You need to learn to make room for others. Don't make this dramatic, Camille. That night, I sat on my new too-small bed, staring at the walls. Cold, empty. That room wasn't mine. It was a reminder. I wasn't first. I wasn't special. I was just there. High school came. Ivy, of course, attended a prestigious STEM academy with daily chauffeured rides. I went to the local public school, commuting on foot, managing my own schedule, doing what I could with what little I had. I stopped trying to compete. You can't win a race if no one admits you're even running. But the final blow, the one that broke whatever hope I'd held onto, came during dinner. It was a regular Thursday evening. My grandparents, Leonard and Margaret, were visiting. They were the only people in our family who ever made me feel seen, heard. We were eating lasagna, and Ivy was, predictably, droning on about some pre-college summer program at Yale. Grandpa smiled at her, then turned to me. And you, Camille? What's next? For the first time in forever, I felt a spark. I just got accepted into the business program at Western University. Partial scholarship. I'm applying for aid to cover the rest. I didn't even get to finish. Mom put down her fork. Camille, your father and I discussed this. We can't help with your tuition. I froze. What? Dad chimed in, like reading a script. We're allocating the college fund to Ivy. Her prep program could open Ivy League doors. It's an investment. I stared. You told me the savings were for both of us. Mom shrugged. Plans change. Maybe consider community college first. Or work for a while. My breath caught in my chest. Not because of the words, but the way they said them. Like it was reasonable, logical. The room fell silent. Even Ivy stopped talking. Then Grandma Margaret spoke, her voice soft but steel-edged. Rachel, Evan, that's not how you treat your child. Both girls are our granddaughters. My mother tightened her lips. It's not your decision. It is, Grandpa cut in. Firm. Because this isn't support. It's neglect, dressed as strategy. That night, as I cleared dishes, Grandma pulled me aside. We'll cover your tuition, Camille. No debt, no strings. Tears welled in my eyes. That's too much. It's not too much, she said. When it's going to someone who's never stopped trying. That fall, I left for college. Ivy didn't look up from her phone. Mom gave me a half-hearted hug and said, Keep receipts? Dad? He handed me a financial advice book, not even signed. But I wasn't angry. I was free. College was the first place where I felt real, like I had a voice. My professors appreciated my ideas. My peers respected my grind. And every week, I called Grandma and Grandpa to tell them about my little victories. They always listened, always cheered. My parents never called, never checked in, but that absence didn't sting anymore because I wasn't chasing their approval anymore. College was more than an escape. It was the first time I could breathe without waiting for someone to measure how well I was doing. There was no checklist, no passive-aggressive reminders taped to the fridge. Just me, my schedule, my books, and the quiet hum of dorm life. My roommate Jenna became one of my first real friends. She had this way of laughing with her whole face and making even the worst midterm cramming sessions feel bearable. Camille. She told me one night as we huddled over instant noodles, "You're weirdly calm for someone who's basically carrying herself up a mountain." I just smiled. I had no idea how to explain it wasn't calm. It was muscle memory. I'd been climbing alone for as long as I could remember. My business courses lit a fire in me I didn't know I had. I wasn't just good, I was thriving. Strategic thinking, data interpretation, reading the room, it all clicked. While Ivy was memorizing formulas for elite tests back home, I was learning how people actually thought, what made markets bend, what drove trust. One professor, Dr. Malik, noticed. He called me after class one day, slid a card across the desk. You ever think about venture capital? You have the mind for it. Fast, precise, but you think with empathy. That's rare. I kept that card in my planner for weeks, too afraid to call. Not because I didn't believe him, but because a part of me still didn't believe I was allowed to believe in myself. Things shifted fast after that. My junior year, I landed a summer internship at Archer Bloom Capital in Portland. Not a massive firm, but competitive and sharp. I worked unpaid hours, stayed late, volunteered to write reports nobody wanted to touch. I didn't network, I built trust. I asked smart questions and actually listened to the answers. By the time I returned to school for senior year, the internship turned into a job offer. A full-time analyst position waiting for me after graduation. I didn't scream, I didn't post it online. I printed the offer, folded it into a card, and mailed it to Grandma Margaret with a note that simply read, "We did it." The day I graduated, they were the only ones who came. Grandpa Leonard wore his suit even though it was too warm, and Grandma cried when my name was called. "You walked that whole road," she whispered when she hugged me after the ceremony. "And you didn't let it crush you." I didn't see my parents that day. No text, no email, but strangely, it didn't ruin anything. I wasn't expecting them anymore. At Archer Bloom, I started at the bottom, but I didn't stay there long. Within a year, I was managing client accounts and building risk models. With a personal twist, I didn't just look at numbers. I tracked behavioral trends, reaction patterns, even how social pressure influenced spending. And it worked. My portfolio saw consistent gains. I was invited to boardrooms, client dinners, even a tech summit in San Francisco. I still remember the way one of the senior partners looked at me afterward and said, "You're not the loudest in the room, but you're the one people remember." But with success came curiosity. Not from strangers, from my parents. It started subtly. A message from Mom asking if I could recommend Ivy for a summer fellowship. "She's applying to your firm's competitor," she wrote, as if that would interest me. No hello. No. "How have you been?" I ignored it. A week later, Dad emailed. Subject line, "Proud of you." The body? A single sentence. "Saw your name on the Forbes shortlist. Let's catch up sometime." I stared at the screen for a long time. It was like being tapped on the shoulder by a ghost. 2 months later, I was invited to speak on a panel at a Women in Finance event in Seattle. After the event, while talking to attendees, I saw them. My parents, standing near the back, clapping politely. Ivy wasn't with them. I didn't walk over. They didn't try to reach me either. We left like strangers in the same room. But the real twist came later that spring. Grandma and Grandpa invited me over for dinner like they always did. As we sat down, Grandpa cleared his throat. Camille, there's something we've decided, and we wanted you to hear it from us first. He slid a sealed envelope across the table. Inside was a revised copy of their will. Everything house, savings, stocks was left to me. Not Ivy. Not my parents. Just me. I was stunned. This is too much. I don't want it if it's going to cause tension. But Grandma just smiled. It's not about money. It's about recognizing effort. You never asked for anything, Camille. And somehow you gave back more than any of us expected. I knew it wouldn't go down well when they found out. But what I didn't expect was how it would unravel everything. I got the call 3 weeks later. Mom. Her voice wasn't angry. It was sharp, clipped, and painfully polite. We need to talk. It's about the will. I didn't flinch. There's nothing to talk about. Grandpa and Grandma made their choice. Her voice cracked slightly. You manipulated them. That made me laugh. By showing up every Sunday? By calling when they were sick? By remembering their birthdays without needing a reminder? Sure, if that's manipulation. She went quiet, then said the words that changed everything. Ivy deserves it more. She's always been the future of this family. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just said, then let her build one. I already am. A week later, I got a legal notice. My parents were contesting the will, claimed undue influence, claimed Grandma wasn't of sound mind. I drove straight to their lawyer's office with a flash drive full of voice recordings, dated calendars, video messages, and notarized letters. Every Sunday dinner, every family holiday. Every moment Ivy and my parents were absent and I was the only one showing up. I didn't yell, I didn't fight. I just handed the evidence over. Their case fell apart before it even started. It wasn't revenge. It was truth with a paper trail. I never told Grandma and Grandpa about the lawsuit. They were too busy planning their anniversary trip. 55 years married, still teasing each other like teenagers. And I started looking at properties. Not for myself, for them. I found a little craftsman house near the coast with a garden, wraparound porch, and a sunrise view. I paid for it in full, in their name, and moved them in the following spring. The day we unlocked that door together, Grandma held my hand. You've built everything we never could, she whispered. Not just success, dignity, peace. I nodded, because for the first time, I felt it too. But this story? It's not over yet. I thought moving my grandparents into that little coastal house would mark the end of the past bleeding into my present. Like, maybe I could finally shut the door on the parts of me that had spent years in silence. But life has a strange sense of timing. Right when you start feeling steady, it hands you a storm disguised as a second chance. It started with a call from Mom. This time her tone wasn't sharp or passive-aggressive. It was warm, almost unsettling. Camille, we've been talking and, well, we think it's time we all come together again. Maybe host a family gathering. You've accomplished so much. It's time to celebrate that, don't you think? I was stunned, not because I believed it was real, but because I didn't. Still, part of me, a foolish, tired part, wanted to believe they meant it. I asked, you want to celebrate me? She laughed softly. Of course. You've done well for yourself. Everyone's proud, everyone, as if they'd all been there watching. I didn't say yes right away. I told her I'd think about it. That night, I sat on the balcony of my apartment, city lights flickering beneath the soft hum of traffic, and asked myself the question I thought I'd buried: what if this really was a turning point? Maybe people change. Maybe. A week later, I agreed. I told her I'd send money to help with catering and decorations, but I didn't want anything extravagant. Just keep it simple, I said. Something intimate. Close family only, she responded. Absolutely. We'll take care of everything. You just enjoy the day. I wired over $3,500 and let her handle the rest. I didn't ask questions. I should have. When I pulled into the driveway of the house I hadn't seen in years, I felt a strange tightness in my chest. Nostalgia twisted with something colder. The place looked expensive. White orchids lined the walkway. The scent of catered dishes hung in the air like perfume. Too polished, too performative. The moment I stepped inside, I knew. This wasn't a celebration for me. I spotted my grandparents near the bar, confused but smiling, and next to them, people I barely recognized. Cousins, extended relatives, neighbors. Then Ivy appeared at the top of the stairs, hair styled, face perfected, and beside her Andrew, a man I'd never met. She descended the staircase like she was the centerpiece of a royal gala. Then came the moment that broke the illusion. My mother clinked her glass. "Dear family," she began, beaming, "we're so happy to have everyone here today. We've gathered to announce something wonderful. Clara and Andrew are engaged." I stood frozen, champagne glass still half raised, watching the applause erupt around me like static. The party I'd funded, the gathering I thought was for me, it had been hijacked. My name wasn't mentioned, not once. I turned to my mother, and she looked past me like I was furniture. I took a step forward, mouth dry but steady. "Excuse me," I said, voice just loud enough to rise above the chatter. "Can I say something?" The room went still. Clara's eyes widened. My father stepped in quickly, placing a hand on my arm. "Camille," he said, voice low and tense. "Don't ruin this. Not here. Not now. You walk out quietly or you don't walk back in again. That includes the will. That includes everything." I shook off his hand. "Funny," I replied. "I don't recall anyone asking me to walk in." I moved to the center of the room. "I'm glad everyone could make it today. I'm especially glad I could pay for the drinks you're holding and the food you're eating. You see, this gathering was supposed to celebrate a recent achievement of mine. I was appointed Chief Strategic Investment Officer at Archer Bloom Capital, first woman under 30 to ever hold the role. My mother offered to host a small family dinner. I sent her money. What I didn't know was that she'd turn it into a wedding preview for someone else." Murmurs rippled. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Clara's fiancé turned to her, confused. "You told me this was your parents' gift," he whispered. Clara's voice cracked. I didn't know when else to tell people." "Using your sister's promotion money?" he asked. "That's low." He turned, placed his glass on the nearest table, and walked out. Clara chased after him, pleading, her voice growing thinner with each step. I stood there, in the wreckage of their carefully staged narrative, unshaken. My mother's face turned a shade I'd never seen, pale with embarrassment, dark with rage. My father's jaw locked as he muttered, "You just cut yourself off, Camille. Don't expect a single cent from this family ever again." Then, the silence broke again, this time from Grandpa Leonard. "David," he said, stepping forward, "if she's cut off, then maybe it's time we clarify who's truly in and who's out." Grandma Margaret joined him, nodding. "The estate is Camille's. It always was, since we updated everything months ago. House, shares, savings, it's all been transferred. We made that choice because we watched. We saw who showed up, who called, who remembered birthdays, who never needed a spotlight to do the right thing." My mother's mouth opened in shock. "You can't be serious. She manipulated you." "No," Grandma said calmly. "She reminded us of what family is supposed to feel like. Quiet loyalty, not entitlement." Clara had returned by then. Mascara streaked, fists clenched. "You've always been jealous," she snapped at me. "You couldn't handle being second, so you had to sabotage me." I didn't flinch. "Jealousy implies I wanted what you had. I never did." She stormed upstairs, door slamming behind her like punctuation. I turned back to the room, to the people still standing there, unsure of where to look. "I didn't plan this moment," I said, "but I'm not sorry it happened. You can only rewrite the story so many times before the truth breaks through the page." I thanked my grandparents, hugged them tightly, and left through the same door I once walked out of with a suitcase and no promises. But this time, I left behind the weight, the need, the silence. I didn't look back. After I walked out of that house, I drove aimlessly for a while, letting the quiet of the night soak into my bones like a balm. The air was cool, the stars scattered across the sky like they'd been placed there just for me. I didn't cry, I didn't rage, I just breathed. It was the first time in a long while that I felt completely detached from the weight of needing to be understood by people who never even tried. The version of me they created, the one always too emotional or too average or too much of a disappointment, that girl had disappeared the second I chose not to stay silent. By the time I reached my grandparents' house, they were already waiting by the porch with 2 cups of tea, and the kind of smile that comes from knowing the truth has finally been spoken out loud. Grandma reached for my hand as I sat down. "You don't owe them anything," she said softly, "and you never did." I looked at her, my heart heavier and lighter all at once. "I know. I just wish it hadn't taken so long to say it out loud." Grandpa chuckled from his chair, rocking slowly. "The timing was perfect, Camille. Some stories need to burn before they can rebuild." I stayed the night, curled up in my old room with the familiar scent of lavender and vanilla from the linen spray Grandma always used. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of clarity, not anger, not sadness, just calm. I didn't need to retaliate. I didn't need to explain myself further. The people who mattered already knew. And the rest? They were still stuck in a story they told themselves to avoid looking in the mirror. Back in the city, I poured my energy into work. My promotion at Archer Bloom had already shifted things, but after what happened at the party, I found a new kind of focus. I wasn't just working to prove myself anymore. I was building something that reflected everything I had become. I started expanding Prism, the internal risk intelligence platform I'd quietly created during late nights and weekends. Originally, it had been a personal project, an algorithm that pulled not just from financial data, but from behavioral patterns, social sentiment, and even cultural shifts. It predicted how people would act, not just how markets would move. At first, some at the firm dismissed it as too abstract, but then it started delivering results. Consistent, powerful results. Within 3 months, our portfolios were outperforming benchmarks. Clients began asking for the Prism reports by name. Upper management noticed. Meetings got longer. Invitations to leadership strategy sessions became regular. And then came the moment I didn't see coming. Richard Langley, our CEO, called me into his office. He was a polished man with an unnervingly calm demeanor, always sipping espresso like it was part of his bloodstream. "Camille," he said, setting his cup down, "in 6 months, I'm stepping down. We've begun succession planning, and your name has come up multiple times." I blinked, unsure if I heard him right. "Me?" As in, he nodded. "You've built something scalable, sustainable, and entirely original. You lead without ego. You see people. That's what this company needs." For a moment, the weight of everything I'd carried, every insult, every oversight, every time I was told I wasn't enough flashed across my mind like a montage. I straightened my back and met his eyes. "If you believe I'm ready, then I am." The announcement came 2 months later. I was named the incoming CEO of Archer Bloom Capital at 31, youngest in the firm's history, first woman to ever hold the position. The press release hit headlines across business media, and suddenly people who never looked my way were eager to connect. Emails, LinkedIn requests, interview invitations. I accepted a few, but kept most of my world quiet. I didn't need noise. I needed direction. I called my grandparents first. Grandpa shouted, "Knew it!" through the phone before I could finish the sentence. Grandma cried. Real tears. The kind that make you feel everything you've done was worth it. After we hung up, I sat alone in my office and let it sink in. Not just the title, but the journey. From being the forgotten daughter to the woman building empires on her own terms. 3 weeks into my new role, I received an unexpected visitor. The receptionist buzzed in. "There's someone here asking to see you. She says it's personal." I walked out, heels silent on the polished floor, and there she was, Clara. She looked thinner, almost faded. Her coat was expensive, but her posture was unsure, like she wasn't used to not being the center of attention. I didn't speak first. She did. "I'm not here to apologize," she said quickly, defensive. I just wanted to understand how you're doing so well, how you did it without anyone." I tilted my head. "Without anyone? You mean without mom and dad choosing me? Without being handed everything?" She shifted, uncomfortable. "You always seemed so calm, even back then. I thought maybe you didn't care." I took a breath, then said, "I cared, but I stopped waiting for approval. I learned how to live without needing it." Clara looked down, then back at me. "It's hard, not having them in your corner." I nodded. "It is, but it's harder pretending you don't notice when they're not." There was a pause, a beat of silence heavy with everything she wasn't saying. "I'm staying with them again," she added quietly. "Things haven't worked out. Andrew left. The job didn't last. They're trying to help, but it's not the same anymore." I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt tired, not of her, but of the cycle. The never-ending pattern of blame, avoidance, and silence. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Clara," I said. "Truly." She didn't respond. She just nodded and left. As I returned to my office, I realized something had changed. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't seeking vindication. The power I held now wasn't in proving them wrong. It was in knowing I never needed their version of right. I sat at my desk, surrounded by glass and sunlight, and began drafting a mentorship program for young women entering finance. Not because it would look good, but because I wanted to make space for someone else who felt invisible in a room full of noise. That evening, I visited my grandparents again. We sat outside under the soft glow of garden lights, drinking tea and watching the ocean breathe. Grandma asked, "Do you ever think about going back?" I shook my head. "I went back once. It didn't change anything. Some doors need to stay closed." She smiled. "Then you leave them closed and build something better in their place." I looked out at the horizon, the last of the sun melting into gold. I already am. The weeks following Clara's visit passed quietly, like a calm tide receding after a storm. She didn't reach out again, and I didn't expect her to. Whatever she was looking for that day, an explanation, maybe a sliver of understanding she'd already received. I didn't owe her closure. She had to build that herself. Meanwhile, my life moved forward with a kind of clarity I hadn't known before. Work flourished. Prism became a flagship division within Archer Bloom, and under my leadership, we launched a data initiative focused on ethical investing, realigning financial strategy with environmental and social responsibility. People said it couldn't be done. Then we did it. Revenue rose, investor confidence skyrocketed, and I was asked to speak at conferences I once only dreamed of attending. I didn't feel like I had arrived. I felt like I had finally grown into the space I was always meant to occupy. One crisp fall afternoon, as I was finalizing the year-end financial reports, I got a text from Grandma. "Any chance you're free Sunday? Grandpa wants to make his famous honey glazed roast." I smiled at the screen. I always made time for them. Always. That weekend, I drove down to the coast. Leaves were turning orange and amber, blanketing the roads in color. When I pulled into their driveway, Grandpa was already outside pretending to rake while waiting for me. "Took you long enough," he said, grinning. Inside, the kitchen smelled like rosemary, caramelized onions, and warmth. We sat around the table, just the three of us, and talked about everything and nothing. It felt like home, not the house I grew up in, but this feeling, this space. After dinner, we moved to the living room, the fire crackling softly. Grandma reached for a small box on the coffee table and handed it to me. "Open it," she said. Inside was a faded photo album, but not just any album. This one held pictures from my childhood, the ones I thought had been lost or ignored. Me with my paint-covered fingers at 5. Me winning a school award in 4th grade. Me, blurry and laughing, in the background of family parties where I'd always felt invisible. "We kept these," Grandpa said, "even when no one else did." I turned the pages slowly, each photo a reminder that I was never completely forgotten. I just hadn't known where to look for proof. That night, before bed, Grandma sat beside me. Her voice was low, steady. "We're not getting any younger, Camille, and there's something we've been thinking about." I turned toward her, sensing the weight of what she was about to say. "We want to transfer the property to you, now, not just in the will, while we're still here. This place, this land, it's yours." I stared at her, stunned. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "You've built your world with grace. We want to make sure you have roots, too. Somewhere solid, somewhere earned." I couldn't speak at first, not because I didn't want it, but because for the first time I was being given something freely, without conditions, without guilt. I hugged her tightly, feeling more seen in that moment than I ever had as a child. The next morning, I sat on the porch alone with a cup of coffee, watching the fog roll over the sea. My mind drifted back to everything that had led here. The years of trying to be enough, the moments I swallowed my own voice, the times I questioned whether I was allowed to want more. I didn't regret the struggle, but I did feel the silence it left behind. And yet now, that silence had become something else, something holy, peaceful, mine. A month later, I got a formal invitation in the mail, white envelope, gold lettering, Clara's handwriting. Inside, a card that read, "Family dinner, hosted by Rachel and Evan Rivers, celebrating new beginnings." I turned it over. No message, no personal note, just an address, a date, and the silent implication that I was expected to attend. I stared at it for a while. Not angry, not surprised, just reflective. I didn't RSVP. I didn't return the card. But I did make a decision. I wasn't going to run from it, not anymore. When the day came, I didn't dress to impress. I wore a soft blue blouse, simple black pants, and a necklace Grandma had given me on my 25th birthday. Something real. I drove alone, arriving just as the sun began to dip behind the trees. The house looked almost exactly as I remembered it, except older. Faded. Smaller somehow. I walked in without knocking. They were gathered in the living room. My mother stood up quickly, smoothing her dress. "Camille," she said, trying to smile. "Glad you could come." Clara was there too, seated stiffly beside her. Dad lingered near the fireplace, drink in hand. The room fell quiet. Then Mom cleared her throat. "We've been reflecting lately. A lot has changed. And maybe it's time we move forward as a family." I didn't respond, she continued. "We know we weren't always fair, but family is family. We should come together again." Dad nodded slowly. "You're successful now. You've done well. It's admirable. And we'd like to be part of your life again if you're willing." It was strange, hearing those words spoken out loud. But they didn't land the way they might have years ago. They didn't soften me or stir some long-lost ache. They felt like statements made too late, stretched thin by years of absence and conditional affection. I looked around at them, the people who had once defined my world, who had built a version of love that required silence to survive. And I realized I didn't hate them. I just didn't need them anymore. I appreciate the invitation, I said calmly. But I'm not here to reconcile. I'm here because I no longer carry the weight of needing your approval. Mom's face faltered. Clara blinked fast. Dad didn't move. I stepped forward, my voice steady. You taught me that love comes with strings, that success only mattered if it was convenient for you. But I built a life without those strings, and I'm not going to tie myself back into them just to make you feel comfortable. The room was silent. Then I added, I forgive you, but I don't want to rebuild what was broken. I'm not interested in recreating the past. I'm too busy building the future. And with that, I turned and left. I didn't slam the door. I didn't wait for someone to follow. I simply walked away, not in defiance, but in certainty. I wasn't lost. I wasn't wounded. I was finally free of the idea that I had to earn what I now gave myself without apology: respect, peace, belonging. That night, back at my apartment, I lit a single candle and wrote in the journal I had kept since college. A line that came without hesitation: some people want to make peace with you only after you've built something they can't take credit for. I closed the book and smiled. There was nothing more to explain. The story was mine now. 3 years have passed since the day I walked out of that final family gathering without looking back. 3 years since I chose silence over performance, distance over damage, and clarity over chaos. And in those 3 years, not once have I regretted it. My parents never called. They never followed up. Clara never sent another invitation or text. And the funny thing is, I never felt the absence. Because I had already lived a life starved of presence, I had grown strong in hunger. And now I was full in a way they would never understand. My grandparents are older now, a little slower but still sharp as ever. We have dinner every Sunday without fail. It's become tradition. We cook together, watch old documentaries, talk about the world like we're still shaping it, and maybe we are in our own way. On the porch, Grandpa still hums the same tune, while fixing the railing he refuses to replace. Grandma still sneaks extra cookies into my bag when I leave, pretending not to notice my knowing smile. This house by the coast, the one they gifted me, has become more than a home. It's a quiet monument to everything we've endured, a place where wounds didn't just scar, they healed. At work, I've taken Archer Bloom to places it had only dreamed of before. We've expanded internationally, invested in sustainable innovation, and grown our client base through transparency, not tactics. I'm no longer just the CEO. I'm a mentor, a builder, a voice for the ones who sit in the back of the room and think no one sees them. I see them, because I was them. Prism is now the foundation of our entire analytics division. But more than that, it's become a symbol, a reminder that complexity and intuition are not opposites, they're partners. People used to tell me emotion had no place in finance. I proved them wrong. Empathy isn't a liability, it's a lens. One that catches what data alone never could. Every year on my birthday, Grandma makes the same carrot cake she did when I was 9, back when she was the only one who remembered. This time, she added little sugar stars on top. You've always been one, you just needed your own sky, she said. I couldn't speak, just held her hand and let the silence say the rest. Grandpa handed me a wrapped gift. Inside was a pen. Heavy, gold-tipped, engraved with a date, my first day as CEO. It's time to start writing your own chapters, he said. No edits from anyone else. I keep that pen on my desk now, beside the framed photo of the 3 of us in the garden, smiling with no agenda, no show, just joy. Sometimes I get asked if I ever think about reconciling with my family, about going back, starting over, opening the door they refused to walk through before. My answer is always the same. I don't live in the past. I honor it. I learned from it. But I don't go backward to prove I've moved forward. Healing doesn't always come with reunions. Sometimes it's in the quiet confirmation that you never needed to be chosen by people who only loved you when you stayed small. And I'm not small anymore. Clara is still in Salem, living with our parents. From what mutual contacts say, things haven't changed much. She floats between jobs, sometimes posts about new ventures online that quietly disappear. There's no engagement ring, no wedding photos, just curated smiles and filtered brunch plates. I don't envy her life, but I don't pity it either. Everyone walks their path at their own pace. I just stopped offering myself as a stepping stone on hers. My parents have become quieter too, at least in public. They no longer speak about me at family events. I've been edited out of their narrative, just like I once was from the walls of my childhood room. But this time, I don't mind, because I've written an entirely different story, one they can't revise. Last month, I gave a keynote at a global women's leadership summit. The room held over 1,000 people. I stood there under soft lights, a microphone in hand, and told my story not with bitterness, not with drama, but with conviction. I spoke about what it means to grow up overlooked, about how silence isn't always submission, and how strength doesn't always look like shouting. I ended with a line that came to me in a moment of stillness one night by the ocean. The greatest freedom is not proving them wrong. It's knowing you were never wrong to begin with. The applause didn't matter. The spotlight didn't matter. What mattered was the girl inside me, the one who used to sit alone in the smaller room beside the laundry, holding back tears, finally felt seen by me. And maybe that's what closure really is. After the summit, I returned home and spent the weekend planting new flowers in the garden with Grandma. She said, "You know, Camille, most people think legacy is what you leave behind after you're gone. But I think legacy is what you give away while you're still here." I paused, wiping my hands on my jeans. "Then I hope I'm giving the right things." She looked at me, eyes soft and proud. "You are. You've already given more than you'll ever realize." That evening, as the sun sank behind the horizon and the world softened into shadow, I stood at the edge of the porch, the ocean breeze wrapping around me like an old friend. I thought about everything it took to get here, the grief, the grit, the quiet choices, the loud truths. And I knew, without doubt, that none of it was wasted. Every moment had led to this one. A life that wasn't loud, but full. A story not rewritten, but reclaimed. A home not inherited, but earned. I am Camille Rivers, firstborn daughter. Once forgotten, now unforgettable. I am not a product of my pain. I am a product of what I chose to become despite it. And if anyone asks where I come from, I will smile and say, from the silence, I built something that finally spoke for me. Story 2. I once promised I would never go back to that place again. However, one night in early December, my little daughter asked me, "Mom, do I have grandparents?" With those big, expectant eyes, I was aware that my heart could no longer remain silent. Lily, my daughter, was only 8 years old, continued to believe in magic. I still believed that Christmas was the season when families could reconnect, no matter how far apart they were. Although I felt as though I had just over an ancient, corroded, thorny barrier, I remained silent for a considerable amount of time before nodding. 3 years have passed since my divorce. My mom didn't call. My father's message was a chilly one-liner. In a split, everyone bears part of the guilt. That, I believed, made it quite evident. I was no longer a part of their universe then. Furthermore, they had left my possession. Lily, however, was unaware of all of it. They remained grandparents. On Christmas Eve, she thought two folks would be ecstatic to find their granddaughter knocking on their door with a small box of cookies and a beaming grin. I couldn't bring myself to rob her of that dream. "Do you think they'll like me?" she asked me 3 weeks before to the holiday. She spoke in a low, nearly whispery voice. After a moment of hesitation, I said, "Of course they will." But as if I had just given up a bit of my reality to give her a few days of hope, my throat constricted. "Maybe, just maybe, they'll see her the way I do," I assured myself. And I was doing it for Lily. Lovely, imaginative, thoughtful, past her years. I could have been mistaken about them. On the morning of December 24th, we headed out. I'd been getting ready all week, scrounging every last penny out of my savings, and taking on additional work to get Lily a new pair of heels and a red velvet dress with white lace trim. Grandma, Grandpa, and Uncle all received handcrafted cards that she meticulously crafted, each with a love-filled, unevenly written letter embellished with crayon illustrations. She was holding them tightly to her chest, as if she was worried that someone would rip them. "Will my drawings be hung on the wall, in your opinion?" As I nodded her bow in front of the mirror, she requested, "Of course they will, my love," I responded with a grin and a straightened hair. Snow-covered highways were traversed by my ancient SUV, twinkling Christmas lights in the windows. However, I just experienced a constriction in my chest. I didn't think of warmth or laughing in that house. Judgment always arrived there gently, like a chilly breeze, yet with enough force to chill the heart. My mother, Martha, opened the door when we got there. She had the same tightly curled hair, red lips, and a grin that never made it to her eyes. "Patricia, it's been a while." She turned to Lily after saying that. "This is she, then?" Leaning down, she put a hand on Lily's shoulder as if she were checking a freshly arrived parcel. my kid said cheerfully. My name is Lily. The chill made her cheeks flushed. My mother said, her gaze darting from Lily's dress's mud-streaked hem to the salt marks on her shoes. The house was unusually silent inside. Like something from a home magazine, the Christmas tree in the corner glistened. Every decoration is in its proper position. My father, Henry, sat in his normal recliner by the fireplace, the TV on low, holding a cup of coffee he didn't stand, just gave a little nod like someone accepting a bank account. His voice was as flat as a weather prediction as he continued. Didn't think you two would actually show. Lily waved timidly. Hello, Grandpa. Her tiny hand, which was trembling a bit, was nestled inside a cream-colored knit glove. He simply gazed at her. Harper said nothing. My fake grin was trembling as I stood still. Nothing truly prepares you for the icy indifference of folks who used to be home, but I had prepared myself for this. But Lily didn't waver. She moved closer, clutching her tiny paper bag of cards, and murmured, I brought presents for everyone. She spoke clearly, like a little bell, softly yet oddly loudly, like the room's quiet at the museum. My heart was overflowing as I gazed at her, part pride, part sadness, a little hope, only a tiny bit. Like holy jewels, she placed each card on the coffee table. A hand-cut pink heart was adhered to the one for Grandma Martha. A drawing of a Christmas tree was in Grandpa Henry's possession, and 2 hand-holding individuals beneath. My heart fell as I saw how much the second person resembled myself, but I dared not inquire who it was. He once referred to his daughter as the worst letdown of his life. I also created Uncle Peter one, Lily replied as she gave the man seated across the room a card. My younger brother, Peter, left home when he was 20 and just recently returned following a bad marriage. Nodding, he accepted the card without opening it. Thank you, he said in a dry voice. As if the past still existed in every nook and cranny of this chilly, gleaming room. I glanced at him and saw his eyes dart away. Lily was unaware. She proceeded with her little mission, approaching my cousin Chloe, who was sitting on the couch and browsing through her phone when Lily gave her the card. She didn't even raise her head. Oh. Thanks, child, I muttered. I sat transfixed, holding a lukewarm cup of tea, too scared to talk, till I returned to her computer, the drumming of her nails louder than my aching heart. Part of me was enraged. I'm a little scared. More than anything, though, I felt helpless. These individuals in this house are unchanged. Everything has a place, yet it's all utterly meaningless. Once she had distributed all the cards, Lily came back to sit next to me and whispered, her eyes still bright. Grandma's probably going to read my card, Mom. I turned to face my mom. Instead of examining the card she was holding, she set it down beside the crystal light and turned away as if it were a piece of junk mail. My father dropped his coffee cup, moved over to the tree, and started searching beneath it. He produced a square box that was neatly wrapped in gleaming blue paper with a striking red ribbon. He held it up, turned to Lily, and gave it up without any emotion. It's for you, equally, he said. It has your name on it. Lily's jaw fell agape. Her eyes glowed like a falling star as she extended her hand and accepted the gift. A glimmer of optimism ignited within me. Perhaps, just possibly, he had reconsidered. She knelt down on the mat and unfolded every wrinkle as she gently peeled down the tape. Every breath and every tear of paper was audible to me. She opened the lid and held. The entire room seems to stop. Her face then became cold. Her little shoulders tensed as the smile gradually disappeared. Reaching into the box, Lily did, feeling in a vacant area. Her eyes were hesitant as she gazed up at me. There was nothing in the gift package. I couldn't speak. No explanation, no toy, no message, just a blank box with bright promises and glossy paper. My father then laughed. A brief, icy, ruthless sound. Children today. Dreaming too large all the time, he said, glancing at Lily as if she had committed some absurd error. You don't get stuff in life simply for turning up. The air around me seemed to have turned to stone. Lily's eyes were sparkling, but she hadn't yet shed a tear. I started to say anything, but Chloe grinned, put her phone down on the table, and muttered something sharp. Like her mother, she constantly assumes that being pathetic indicates that someone owes you something. I looked around, my eyes as hard as a rock. That's enough, Chloe. Come on, please. Was I lying? She gave a shrug. Patricia, why did you return it all? To give this poor child the impression that magic exists in families? Although Lily remained silent, I could see her hands clenching around the empty box and holding it to her breast as if she still had hope. Something warm, something real, maybe inside. I wanted to scoop her into my arms and walk away from that location forever. However, I was aware that doing so would teach her that all wounds should be buried, that the solution to suffering is quiet. I had lived like that for almost 30 years, and I determined I wouldn't let Lily learn the same lesson. She gave me a look, her eyes moist but not cracking. It was more painful to see her swallow her emotions than if she had actually wept. "Don't worry, Mom," she muttered. "Grandpa still has a present from me." I realized then that this was not the end of it. Not in this place. Not right now. Lily stood motionless, clutching the empty present box as though, with a little more waiting, it could transform into something else. Something in her eyes hadn't quite gone, but they didn't shine the way they had when she first entered the home. A little flame, feeble yet unyielding. I reached over to give her a hug, but Lily gave me a soft shake of her head. Reaching inside her coat pocket, she put the package aside. She took out a piece of paper that was neatly folded and held it in both hands, as if it were a treasure. And I felt my heart tighten. There was stillness throughout the whole room. "Grandfather." Her voice was light as air but clear. "For you, I have a present." Henry, my dad, still had his coffee cup in his hand. He froze for a second, arched an eyebrow, and sat back in his chair. His expression was a combination of sarcasm and astonishment. "He? A present for me?" He grinned. "I hope it's not a lecture from your mother." Lily didn't flinch, but I clamped my fists together, attempting to remain composed. She stepped forward. Both hands were still outstretched, shaky but steady. "I made it myself," Lily remarked. It took 3 days to finish, her gaze fixed on his as if she were talking to a friend rather than someone who had just handed her an empty box. My mother, Peter, and Chloe all turned to stare. Nobody spoke. Gradually, Henry put down his coffee and extended his hand to grab the paper. I didn't breathe. With a neutral expression on his face, he unfolded it with one hand while looking at the inside of the paper. Something appeared to change. I was unable to identify it. Only that the customary wrinkle in his brow disappeared and his shoulders tensed. His eyes became less piercing as usual. Rather, there was a glimmer of perplexity, as if he were witnessing a remnant of a long-gone existence, a memory that had not entirely vanished. Nobody said anything. Suddenly, the wall clock's ticking grew oddly loud. From where I sat, I couldn't see the paper, but I could see how he stared at it, as though it had brought to memory something significant that he had long forgotten. Still holding the paper, he got to his feet. Even if his steps were neither solid or fast, each one had a unique quality. "Dad, my mom gave me a call." I was surprised he didn't respond. Just left the room, slipped behind the wood door, and went down the corridor toward the kitchen. "Don't smash the door, no justification," Peter scowled. As though anticipating a response I didn't have, Chloe glanced at me and arched an eyebrow. I looked across at Lily. She remained still. They clasped hands, still staring at the door where Henry had disappeared. "Mom?" Softly, she inquired. "Did I do something wrong?" I pulled her into my arms as I knelt next to her. "No, dear. You made the correct decision. I'm not as bold as you are." Lily didn't say anything more. She only nodded slightly and rested her head on my shoulder. I knew without having to ask. Unanswered questions swirled in her heart. What my father saw in that paper was unknown to me. However, I saw Lily's small artwork later that night while I was packing our belongings and she was folding some old wrapping paper. She created a copy in case the original was damaged. The image was drawn using a crayon. A blonde girl with a smile sits next to an elderly guy at a large wooden table. An apple pie, the type my mother used to make for the holidays before everything went cold at the bottom, was on the table. Lily had used large, rounded letters when writing. "I hope you'll find happiness once more. You used to chuckle a lot," according to Mom. I had no idea if you had read those words, but I knew that my father would be moved by anything. Frozen for several years, Lily had delivered it with the same unadulterated honesty, nor expecting anything in return. All I can hope for is that someone will remember how to love. And sometimes a little reminder like that is all it takes to bring back a part of ourselves that we believed had been lost forever. Henry didn't come back into the living room all night. Not once. Not when the customary overdone turkey was brought to the dining table. My mother used to serve wine and tell stories that no one really paid attention to. Not even when, as if attempting to mend a ripped day, Lily stealthily gathered up stray pieces of wrapping paper and folded them gently. Nobody mentioned what had occurred. Nobody inquired about Lily's feelings. And nobody gave me a sympathetic glance, as though maintaining silence and acting convincingly would cause the truth to vanish like morning mist. Chloe continued to stare at her phone. Like a machine, Peter washed the dishes. Like every other Christmas night, my mother locked the door to her bedroom after saying goodnight in her typical bland tone, However, it wasn't. Absolutely not. I turned to see Lily cuddled up on the couch in her blanket, holding the same old teddy bear she always brought with her. She gazed toward the corridor where Henry had vanished, her eyes wide. I didn't have to inquire as to why she was waiting. And even though I really wanted to reassure her, I couldn't guarantee that he would return. In all honesty, I didn't think he would. Snow continued to fall gently the following morning. I was up packing in solitude even though the sun hadn't risen yet. I left a small note on the kitchen table, but I didn't notify anyone we were going. We appreciate you having us, Lily and Patricia. Why we were going early was not questioned by Lily. She simply strolled silently next to me, her brand new black shoes digging a little into the thin layer of snow that covered the stone walkway. I started the car, opened the passenger door for her, and put the suitcase in the trunk. Disappointment no longer clouded Lily's once clear eyes as she gazed back at the house through the window, searching now in silence. The trip home was a quiet one. Just radio music, nothing too loud, blending in with the windshield wiper's steady sound. I considered questioning her about the drawing and the reasons behind her decision. However, I stopped myself. I came to the realization that certain things don't require words. It was the most sincere present she had given him, a memory one, a reminder of a long-forgotten aspect of the past. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep, I sat by the window of our small city apartment. No trees decked out in glittering lights, no deep snow. However, it felt secure. My father, who I had always perceived as severe, harsh, and aloof, came to mind. Did he discard the drawing as soon as he left the room? Or did he keep it? I had no idea. Perhaps I would never. Until 3 days later, I did what I always did and opened the door to get the mail. On the doorstep was a little box, just 4 neatly handwritten words for Lily, with no return address. It raced strangely inside my heart as I brought it in. When I gave Lily the box, her eyes brightened while she was coloring at the table. "From whom is it, Mom?" she inquired. I gave a head shake. "I'm not sure, but please open it." There was a little brown painted wooden music box inside. Its details are expertly carved by hand. The Edelweiss melody started playing when Lily turned the side crank. I got chills because it was so unexpected, gentle, and soft. Beneath only one sloppy line of handwriting was a small note. "I appreciate you reminding me of her." No signature, no other hint. However, I was aware. I knew exactly who had written it. No evidence is required. No confirmation is required. The music box was held against Lily's chest. Suddenly, her eyes were softer than normal. "Do you suppose Grandpa remembered, Mom?" Quietly, she asked. I nodded as I took a seat next to her. "I think he did, sweetheart." "Did you aid in his memory?" Lily remained silent. The melody filled the quiet apartment as she sat there and turned the little crank again. I had no idea how much my father had changed, but I was aware that Lily had somehow gotten to the part of him that was still sensitive. Can you still recall? Still listen? And the journey was worthwhile just for that. Lily had something of her own to cling to ever since the music box appeared. She merely put a small box next to her bed every night and didn't ask any questions or discuss it much. Listened softly and turned the crank once. Like the last breath of the day, the song Edelweiss softly touched the quiet of our tiny house and eased the weight of everything, in part because I wanted to maintain that delicate feeling as if touching it might break the spell. I refrained from pressing her, partly because I was caught in my own circle of unspoken thoughts. Someone had sent that music box. Someone had written that note, and I knew no one. But my father had that shaky, blocky, awkward handwriting. I had grown up seeing it in his books, in the notes taped to the fridge. Always that same handwriting, always that same feeling. Clear but distant. Only this time there was no distance. That night, after Lily was asleep, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of cold tea, still turning the note over in my mind. "I appreciate you reminding me of her." She? Someone Lily had never met, but who lived in her heart. Through my stories. Evelyn. My mother never spoke of Evelyn. As I grew up, she was like a name crossed out of the past. My father rarely mentioned his mother either, except in passing comments at dinner when he couldn't hold back his complaints. My mother would have never put up with this lifestyle, or she taught me to endure, not to be soft like this. And yet, Lily somehow had brought back the memory of someone this entire family had tried to forget. The next morning, as I was preparing breakfast, the phone rang a weird number. I nearly didn't answer, but my hand moved on its own. "Patricia," a deep masculine voice with hesitancy. "Indeed. Who's this?" "It's Peter." I was taken aback. "Peter, what's happening on?" He paused for a few seconds, then spoke quickly like he was afraid he might change his mind. "Dad wants to visit Lily." I nearly dropped the cup in my hand. What? He didn't explain much. Just said, if you're good with it, bring her to the home Sunday afternoon. No one else knows. Just he wants to chat. I stood transfixed for a long. My father had never invited anyone to come in all these years. He previously gave a youngster an empty box, and now he wanted to meet Lily. I promised to give it some thought. Setting the phone aside, I remained still as I gazed at the milk splattering on the table. I couldn't stop wondering all afternoon. Was this merely one more emotional snare? Would he repeat that same harsh indifference again? But then I looked at Lily. She was coloring a card with flowers while she sat by the window. It was her go-to method for self-calming. And I saw that perhaps the best course of action right now was to let her confront things the way she has in the past, rather than protecting her by avoiding everything. I took Lily back to the old house on Sunday. There were ice patches on the walkway where the snow had melted. At the end of the street, I came to a stop. My heart is hesitant. Are you prepared? I inquired. Lily nodded, her expression more solemn than normal. Grandpa needs someone to listen, I believe. I steadied and warmed her hand as soon as we entered the porch. Almost immediately, the door opened. Not Peter, not my mom. Henry was the one. No coffee and no coat. An elderly man with sunken eyes, grayer hair than before, and, at last, a face free of confusion or annoyance. He said gently, "Hello, Lily. Hello, grandfather." Lily answered with a modest but genuine grin. He opened the door wide and took a step back. "Enter. I want to show you something." And that's it. I was aware that something had changed. A door slowly opening instead of a happily ever after. We entered inside a rather silent house. The TV was silent. No dishes clinking. Not the normal meal smell. Even though the home was still neat, there was a certain softness to it now, as though someone had softly removed the previous severity. Lily followed Henry into the living room. I started to follow, but he turned to me and said, "Your brother is in the backyard, Patricia." Without being rude, "You might want to spend some time out there." A little taken aback by how light his voice sounded today, I nodded. I then took a step back, giving them the entire room to themselves. Henry read his newspaper every morning in the chair by the fireplace, where Lily was sitting. With the music box on the table between them, he took a seat across from her. For a time, none of them talked. The stillness was then broken by Lily. "Are you a fan of this song?" She turned the crank and asked softly. With each note falling like a drop of water into a quiet pond, the gentle melody filled the air. Henry looked at the rotating lid and nodded. "I have, and for the past several nights, I've kept it by my bedside." Lily grinned. "Did Grandma Evelyn enjoy this song?" Mom asked. He inhaled deeply, then let it out gradually. "She did. She used to fold laundry and sing it. I always thought her voice was the most beautiful sound in the world, even if it wasn't very good." The room fell silent once again. Lily simply grabbed inside her tiny knapsack next to her without saying anything. She took out a folded piece of paper that had been kept for too long and had some wrinkles on the corners. Then, with her eyes unwavering but her hands quivering a little, she gave it to him. She answered, "This is the original. The one I gave you on Christmas was a duplicate. I wanted to preserve this one." He accepted it, gently revealing every fold as though it contained something priceless and fragile. I watched him halt when the drawing unfolded entirely. I could see a portion of the image through the glass. 3 individuals, hand in hand, Henry, tall and wide, holding hands with a bright-eyed, curly-haired lady, Evelyn, as well as amongst them, Lily. A grin lifted her face. At the drawing's bottom, it read a short line of text. "I hope you'll smile once more in the future. Mom claimed that you used to giggle a lot when you were with your grandmother." Henry was still looking at the paper when I noticed him leaning back in his chair. However, there was neither misunderstanding nor coldness this time. Nothing but silence and the soft shattering of something behind his eyelids. He remarked in a hoarse voice, "She's been gone 10 years. I've stopped drawing, singing, and telling stories ever since." I simply continued, Lily's head cocked. "But you can still recall her?" "Yes, I do." He gave a little crooked smile as though the sound of it had startled him. "But I can't remember how to present it." "I was reminded by you." A long pause ensued. Then Lily whispered, "Do you ever think she would be depressed if she could see you right now?" Henry became speechless at the question. He tensed, then relaxed his hand on the paper. "Perhaps she would." Softer than a whisper, he spoke. "And it is the biggest thing that terrifies me." Feeling the pain behind my eyes, I turned away and put the drawing back on the table next to the music box. "Would you like to retract this?" he inquired. Lily gave a head shake. "No, you keep it. I believe she would enjoy being close to you once more." The room was silent. It wasn't chilly this time, though. After too many years apart, it felt like a gentle blanket enveloping two souls as they finally made contact. "Henry led us all the way to the door before we left," he said, and there were no meaningless words, only eyes that didn't turn away, and a hand that touched my shoulder tenderly for the first time. "She is superior than her mother." Unsure of what to say, I nodded. Lily waved as she turned around. "Grandpa, goodbye. I'll sketch more for Grandma the next time." His grin was genuine. It dawned on me then that not all presents are wrapped in gleaming paper or adorned with brightly colored ribbons. A week after that afternoon, while Lily drew in the gentle golden sunlight streaming in through our kitchen window, they are recollections, hope, and silent reminders that even the hardest hearts may be moved if someone with the courage to reach out. I got an unopened envelope. No address for return, it's just my name, nicely handwritten. I would never be able to recognize such handwriting. Uncomfortable, firm as though the author had never had to put emotions into words, much less put them on paper. I held something that seemed weighty as stone and featherlight for a long time while I stood still at the threshold. As I opened the mail, I could still hear the music coming from Lily's small box. Edelweiss. More than just a tune now. A link between something that has been asleep for a long time and the present. Inside, there were just 3 lines. "Regarding you, your mother was correct. That young girl is amazing. I hope all is well with you." No sign, no apology, no welcome. The fact that this was either the beginning or the end just added to its calm force. Every line echoed like a reverberation of what I had long desired as I read it 3 times. Not pardon, but acknowledgement. He wrote, "That little girl is wonderful," without apologizing. And it was sufficient for me to break down the barrier I had erected over the years. Just enough to let in some light, if just a little portion. I put the letter in the drawer next to my bed, which is where I keep my most valuable items. Lily stated in a preschool message that she loved me more than strawberries and toast. My grandma sent me a birthday card on my 18th birthday. And now, this little message from a man who was never able to express love. But when I read Lily her bedtime tale that evening, I finally said something. She glanced up at me as she twisted the music box's crank. "Mom?" Softly, she inquired. "Is Grandpa still depressed, in your opinion?" I gazed into her eyes, which were as clear as they had been when she was standing in his living room early one winter morning. She gave a paper present to a man she had just met, her hands shaking. "He's probably learning not to be." I smiled softly as I spoke. "As a result of you?" Lily didn't respond. All she did was hold the music box on her chest. Warm adults might never quite get how youngsters keep secrets. "Henry hasn't gotten back to us since. No messages, no phone calls, and no unexpected visits, like in the motion pictures. But every weekend, a little item would arrive, never with a return address." A pad of colorful drawing paper came first, followed by a set of premium watercolor pencils and a message for your next drawings. It was a picture book about national parks another period. Evelyn used to like going, and most recently, she had a wooden picture frame that was hand-carved, empty, not marked. However, it immediately became clear to me that it was intended for the Christmas drawing Lily gave him. He sent them, but Lily never questioned why. Grandpa smiled again as she only hung the photo near her desk and said, "I know it, Mom. I'm not certain." He grinned genuinely. "However, I am aware that he is beginning to recall. And every transformation starts with that. My father and I don't have a reconciliation tale. I don't anticipate a lengthy discussion, a hot meal, or long overdue embraces." However, I understood after reading those few brief paragraphs. At last, he noticed me. As a mother raising a kid who understands how to love, forgive, and bring about change with nothing more than compassion, not as a disobedient daughter or a burden. He wasn't simply transformed by Lily. She also transformed me. She reminded me that sometimes we just need a place to be heard, not triumph or a solution. Air is a gentle acknowledgement light that is powerful enough to lighten even the harshest winters. And in our little city flat, without a big tree or a loud church bell, for the first time in years, I realized how much Christmas meant to me. It was because we had the guts to offer rather than because of what we got. I was once questioned about why I took Lily back to that house, which was associated with painful memories, a location I once pledged never to return again. Although I didn't have a definitive response at the time, I believe I now understand. I returned her, nor to bring up old issues, nor to win favor from the man who used to make me feel unimportant in my own house. Lily needed to realize that the world isn't just full of picturesque spots, so I brought her back. It was important for her to understand that some individuals are difficult to love, reach, and forgive. However, that does not exclude us from trying. Lily had no desire for vengeance. She didn't expect Henry to change or demand an apology. Praise was unnecessary for her. She only wished to present a sincere gift, a reminder of something that was once lovely and might still be present in a long-forgotten person. As she handed the sketch to him, as straightforward as it appeared, it was brimming with hope, memories, and unwavering love. After years of not being able to, I finally saw, I thought, reach the last of humanity in a guy. Loss and time had become inanimate. It took Henry some time to change. He didn't become a warm grandfather or suddenly bring ice cream or tell fairy stories. However, he sent tiny presents, listened quietly, and above all, he demonstrated. He still had feelings for someone similar to him. That was a significant step. I recall his eyes when Lily said she hoped he'd smile again one day for a second. I caught a glimpse of his former self, the one who spent warm evenings carrying me on his shoulders, taught me how to avoid burning bread when toasting it. It sat beneath the porch while my mother played the piano. That man was never lost. Just now, time had buried him, unspoken displeasure and rage. Nobody ventured to provide a name. Lily with a child, too. A short line of optimism and a sketch revived that memory. Perhaps that's why I think compassion isn't a sign of weakness more than before. It is the most resilient and gentle form of strength. A quiet boldness that doesn't yell or bang fists, but acts at exactly the perfect moment from a clean heart. In the future, I'm not sure how Lily will recall that Christmas. Perhaps she will remember the empty box, the gloomy quiet, and the icy looks. However, I hope that Henry's reaction to her drawing will stick with her. Or when he sent her his very first letter. That's what you should cling to. Because sometimes what makes something wonderful isn't what we get. It's what we have the courage to provide. I never responded to Henry's letter. I realized that certain things didn't need to be stated. Not because I was upset or didn't value what he had done. They have already received acceptance and understanding, and they may be subtly evolving into something else. Real but slow. Every night before going to bed, Lily still cranks the music box, but these days she does more than simply listen. She began to hum along, singing even though her voice was occasionally off-key and as light as a breeze. And I feel a bit more at ease each time she does. I'm confident my kid won't require the barriers I put up to keep myself safe as she grows older. She will never learn to keep quiet when she is harmed or think that she must be tough to get by. She will understand that compassion is a quiet but incisive kind of strength, and that gentleness is a strong decision. I may not have finished my story with my father, but it has taken a different turn because of Lily. Not very wide, but enough to allow in some light. A new door has opened. And sometimes a road we thought was forgotten can be illuminated by a single ray of light. I've learned from Lily's and my narrative that in real life, it's not reason that transforms people, but pure honesty. A modest gesture, a gift generated from pure devotion, may soothe even the most hardened hearts. Despite without expecting anything in return, kindness has the capacity to change the impossibly difficult. And sometimes, all it takes is one youngster who believes in goodness to make the whole world just a bit more compassionate. How do you feel about the tale of Patricia and Lily? Do you think that even the coldest hearts may be warmed by kindness? Please leave a comment below, and remember to subscribe to the channel for more touching tales of life and family.